Hi, so today we are going to be learning how to warp this simple frame loom, lap loom, and the special thing here is that it's got this bar heddle which will enable you to weave a lot faster when you're weaving plain weave. We're not going to use it right away. This set, if you buy it from me, also includes 2 weaving shuttles and a comb, but again we won't need those at the moment for warping. And then if you want, you can also buy warping thread from me. This is pure linen, grown and spun in northern France, which I'll be using today. You can buy this in a 50-meter length, which will do 2 warps of this size frame, at least. And but of course you can buy similar kits and similar warp threads. Cotton will do, any kind of yarn that isn't stretchy will work. So of course you can buy those somewhere else as well. Let's get right to it. I'll link all these products in the description below as well. Now, because this has notches, you don't need to cut your warp thread in advance. You can just start warping it. So if you look here, this is the warp, not warp bar, what's it called? Warp beam. Although I'm sure there are other names for it. You can see it's got 3 notches for every inch, so each notch is about 0.8 something millimeters apart. I will show you one method where we only have 1 string per notch, and the other method where we have 2 strings per notch, so double warping. I generally tend to use the double warped version. I will just show you the single warped one because it's handy for weaving with kids or with very bulky yarn. So it's, in general, the finer your weft yarn, so warps will be going this way and wefts will be the ones that you weave in that way. Generally, the finer those wefts, the closer together you want your warp threads to be. Of course it can give you artistic effects to do it differently, but that's the rule of thumb. So we're going to start off here 2 notches in from the right, so 1, 2, the third one from the right, sorry. And just tie a double knot. Once you've made your double knot there on the 3rd notch, I like to come over the top into the 2nd notch and then under that one towards the left into the 1st one. So you'll see there, that's over, and then under this one into that 1st one, like that. And then you can go from this 1st notch at the bottom to the 1st notch at the top, go over the top one and into the 2nd one, then from the 2nd underneath into the 3rd one, 3rd one up there, and so forth. And this way you will get, whoops, sorry, a little bit of a, and this way you will get 1 thread per notch there, and it will give you a warping distance of 3 ends per inch, which is quite loose. Like I said, it's ideal for very thick yarn, roving, things like that, or if you're weaving with children, this does make it easier for them. Now I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to tie it off yet because I want to show you how to double warp next. So I'm just going to secure it in place like that for now, just so I can show you, if you've got it single warped, how to put this bar heddle in. So yeah, you can see I haven't tied it, I've just put it around here, and that friction is allowing it to kind of stay in place. Enough, not enough to weave on, just enough to demonstrate this to you. So because of the way these notches are actually made for double warping, but you can use them nonetheless. So what you would do is put it in like this. If you've tensioned it so highly that you can't slide this in, you can loosen this by turning anti-clockwise on those wing nuts, and then you can see that loosens this enough to wriggle that in really easily. Then you can straighten it back up and tighten those wing nuts again. Okay, so you can see naturally what the spacing will want to do is to go into those deep grooves. If you put every second one on a high one, like I'm doing there, like that, and like that, you can see how that has created a nice little space here to go in between them. So rather than if I didn't have this shuttle in, they would just look even like that, and you'd have to weave over, under, over, under, over, under. Instead, by using this, you can go through it in one direction this way and through it in the other. Also, this is a really good way, if you're warping this with children and they haven't tensioned it enough, you can always turn this or that bar more outwards to increase the tension on these strings, so that's a good tip as well. Right, so now we're going to go on to what people most commonly do, which is to double warp this. The most common way to do this is to single warp it twice, so to repeat what I've just done again. However, I find that that involves more tying the ends and makes it harder to distribute the tension evenly, so I prefer to do the following. The beginning is the same. We've tied it off on the third one, we go over into the second and below into the first, and then we go into the first one and back down into the second. This is now where it changes. Instead of going into the third, we go back into the first one and then back into the second one, so that we now have two on each of these. Now that we have two on each of those, we can go into the third one and the third notch at the top and the fourth one at the top, and then back over number 3 and 4. So you're essentially warping them in pairs. Can you see that? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. And the 1, 2, 3, 4 in that obviously correspond to each of the notches. So now 5, 5, 6th and 6th notch, and then again 5, 6. And then you keep going like that all along. Now we're almost at the end here. You can see this is my last pair. There we go, we're at the end, and you can see these are relatively loose. If your loom does not have adjustable beams, I would definitely try and tension it more. And the way you can do that, if I just put this one here, the way you can do that is just to kind of pull on these, and you'll see how they'll give a little bit onto the next thread here. And you can see how I can absorb that slack slowly, going from the left, from the furthest most from where you began, and adjust to where you ended, just every time kind of tugging on them a little bit and distributing that slack. Instead, because I've got these adjustable ones, I'm not going to worry about that slack too much. I can feel these two are particularly loose, so I might just tension those a little bit. It's a bit awkward doing this without trying to, trying to keep the loom as still as possible, but hey. Oh. Yeah, that's better. So I'll just do that from here. And so it's quite a bit of slack that I've absorbed by tightening those, although I didn't tighten that tightly either. Yeah, that's better, that's more even. Right, now that we've got to the end here, I'm pulling quite tightly on that and then going into the second one and into the third, again like we did last time. And then you can cut this off. I like to leave quite a long tail. So you can see I've left a tail about as long as a whole warp length. And so if I tension that just again to the second and third and try to keep that tension, although having gone like this with your string will help you keep that tension because you're using the friction of those notches. Pass it round the back. No, that isn't light enough. Okay, so we came from number 1 there, went into number 2, came out at number 3, and then looped it around the back once, and we've come back to this front, and then this is where I slacken it just that little bit to get the string through, and I tighten that knot. I like to pull the string through, but not all the way. You see how I've pulled the string through and made a loop and kept this one on this side. That way you can tug on the side to keep it nice and tight, and then give this 2 twists and grab the string through the loop and pull it tight, and that should make a nice tight knot. And then again, to make sure, you can see as I'm pulling it's still going a little bit, so you can loop it round to the back, pass it through the 4th one and repeat that process just to secure it really nicely. So again, we've done the 4th one there, we pull a little bit of that 4th one out so we get some slack. I like to do this from the right to the left, pass that through, and you can pull on this one but keep that loop, don't pull it through all the way, so keep that string out. Then twist this loop like that. Yeah, can you see there's 2 twisted loops on there? Grab that spare string through the loop and pull it tight. So that should, yeah, now when I test that last one, it's as tight as the other ones, so that's perfect. Just to keep them out of the way, we're going to snip those, sorry, a little bit closer to where they are. Right, and that's it. It's warped and ready to work on. Oh no, sorry, we need to put the heddle bar. So now this is similar to what I showed you earlier. This is still quite slack, so I'm just going to turn the wing nuts anti-clockwise, slacken that a bit, And make sure to tighten them a little bit just because you don't want this falling off, and also don't turn it too far forwards because the threads otherwise will come out. Then we place the bar underneath like that. It should fit nicely. And then, oh, do we need a bit more slack on this one? Maybe we do. So we need a bit more slack. I'm going to open those a bit. Unscrew the top wing nuts a little bit and maneuver this into place like that. You can see now we've got too much slack, but that's fine for the time being. I'll tighten this up. I'll tighten the top one up for now. It's still quite slack, but we do need that slack to be able to rearrange the threads. So now what we're going to do is, starting on the left, lift one into the top and one into the bottom notch, and the same for the next one. So if you see here, every time on that bar heddle there is one deep and one shallow cut or notch in that heddle, in that bar heddle. So notch number 1 on your beam should correspond to notches number 1 and 2 on your heddle. Okay, so you can see how the 2 strings that are coming out of that first notch are going onto the first and second notches of the bar heddle. And likewise from the second notch, the strings are going into the second pair of notches. So the third and fourth notches on the bar heddle, which is actually the second pair of a long and short notch. And so we continue like that. Make sure you're not mistaking 2 threads for a single one. I also recommend checking the bottom to make sure that your 2 warp threads that come out of the same notch aren't twisted. As you can see here, I've got the 2 leaving there and kind of continuing parallel to each other until they get to this, until they get to the heddle. However, on this one, if you take a look there, can you see how they're twisting? So what I would do there is to switch them round. Yeah, you can see I've switched those round, and now when you look they stay parallel the whole way. The edge one is always a bit tricky because you can see here they both came from that right hand side, they're both curving to their right, so that one's a bit trickier to kind of get flat, but with the first few rows of weaving that will even itself out, and you can see all of these are looking nice and parallel. Now you can see I've got 2 notches spare here on the end. The reason that is because at the moment, so because we put 2 into each notch, we have an even number of warp strings, which is good for some cases or some uses. I usually knit with an even number, but there are some things like certain twill, kind of diamond twill patterns and things where it makes sense to have an odd number of warp strings, because then it's easier to make something symmetrical. So in that case, what you would do is you would go into this last one a third. So when you've been round there, you can go in for a third one, or go through and then go up this, or you could go up here, down, and then go for a third one up here, for example, whichever way you decide to do it. But you can add an extra warp string into this last notch, for example, and then you'd have one going into there, and you can see how that would make it symmetrical, because you'd start and end on a warp string in the bottom notch. So that's why it's got one extra set of notches compared to the number of notches up here. But for now, I think if you've warped it evenly, if you plan to just do plain weave, this is perfect. And there you go, that's how you do it. And now you can, oh sorry, it's still a bit too slack, we need to tighten this one at the bottom a little bit, and now you can switch that round. Yeah, there we go. You might need to do this a few times just to kind of get them moving in there smoothly. And so you can see how that heddle creates a nice little shed between the alternating warp threads. And if I turn it that way, it'll make a shed. You can see how the strings that were at the top there move to be at the bottom there. And that will help you weave, so you would weave through, switch your heddle bar over and weave back that way. But I will show you that in another video. It's also worth mentioning that the advantage of using the one with the ends as the bottom and this is the top is that you'll be able to hang your pieces more easily at the end using your warp threads. So you can see on both of these examples, oh, they're getting tangled in each other. So you can see on both of these examples that I've used the loops here simply as they are, or here with a little kind of extra loop method, but in either case I've just used the warp strings to hang this up by, which works really well in my experience. So avoids you having to stitch into your weaving and attach it to the dowel that way. I'll be talking more about how to weave with the ready warped loom to create things like this in my next videos, so please do subscribe if you're interested, and leave me questions or comments in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening. Bye!